Ha ha ha! I had a feeling we'd experience a situation just like this one. The future is now, thanks to Google.
Wow, Google is so amazing. I don't understand it, but it sure looks good.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
G'day and welcome to The Gaming Lovers, episode 49. I'm Jem.
I'm Brendo. We're having a little fun. We've been watching Pokemon XY recently, and, well, the future does appear to be now, thanks to Google. Completely changing the entire landscape of the gaming scene.
Absolutely. Whether that future is a little too early is something we're going to discuss later on in this episode before we get to that.
Or will it just blow up and leave everyone with frizzy hair?
It gives the world afros.
Perfect. I'm very happy about that. It's win-win.
Let's jump straight into our gaming goals because we've got so much to cover in this episode of the Gaming Lovers podcast.
So much. My
So
dear, I
much.
will let you start this week because I'm going to be talking
A
for
lot.
while.
Yes.
So I figured I'd get you out the way first.
Oh, lovely.
Ladies first, as they say. A true gentleman.
Let me shove you through the door so I can talk. Is that what it is? So my gaming goals this week, I've basically been playing more than I thought I would get to, actually, of Stardew Valley. And I am dual wielding this, in a sense. I have a campaign on my iPad as well as on the PlayStation 4. And it's interesting to see because the iPad one I started later when I realized, hey, I can play this on mobile too. So I started that like about a week or so later than the actual PlayStation version, but it's slowly catching up because when you've been playing on the PlayStation, which has been a lot this week.
It has been. Guilty as charged.
I've been sitting next to you farming. So we've been able to do our double gaming. And so that's been quite nice. It actually is pretty good on the iPad. You can just kind of tap and it will go straight to where you tap. And it's fairly responsive. There's only one or two things that are like a little irritating as far as having it translated over to a touch screen. Like when you're changing from one section of the map to another and you have to go right to the edge, it doesn't always respond. Like I'll tap on that bit and sometimes I have to tap it like twice for it to like just move over that one block to then shift over. But otherwise it's been really fun and I've just been interacting with different people deliberately to kind of see different cutscenes and stuff like that too. So
I see.
yeah, I'm having fun.
Who's your bestie in town? Who is your bestie?
My bestie, Shane, I think has been
Oh no.
probably not the best influence. The town alcoholic.
Is that what you look for in a man?
Really not.
Okay, good, because I've completely not done that.
But I've always bumped into Shane as he heads off to work because he has a very deliberate path at like 8:30 in the morning. I always seem to bump into him as I'm heading into town. So it's easy for me to just say hi and annoy him every day, whereas other people have like changing routines and so it's harder to find them and so I don't level up their friendships as easily. So yeah, it's just been more a friendship of convenience, I guess.
Oh, I'm sure Shane feels great about that.
But his story is really sad. The little cutscenes that I have seen so far are heartbreaking. Part of me's like, oh, someone needs a hug. So yes, it's amazing that this game that just seemed like a farm simulator basically has got so much depth to it, and I think we've said that before, but yeah, we're both addicted to Stardew Valley.
We're late to the party. I have also been playing Stardew Valley. Made it just to the threshold of winter of my first year. It's winter is coming, and it's going to kill everything on my farm, except for my chickens, because they have a heater in their little coop.
Mm-hmm. I have a cow too.
What's the cow's name?
Bailey. And she's so cute. Anyways, enough of my digital farm. I haven't really done much else. I keep promising I'll play Mass Effect and then I keep remembering where I'm up to and I go, no. So I've hit a bit of a wall there.
You realise that DLC is optional.
No, but
You don't have to play it.
But I started it. So in order to get back to the main mission, I have to finish it. You know what I mean? Like, I fell down the rabbit hole. Now I need to get out the other side.
Pay me $50, I'll do it for you.
No, it's okay. But yeah, that's been my week. It's been pretty chill. thus far. I'm looking to add something else. Like for next month, I want to do something different before heading overseas. I would like to mix things up a little bit because I know that when I'm overseas, it will just be anything that's on my phone and iPad. That's what I'll be limited to. So
Sekiro, are you ready?
to have me play or to hear you talk about it?
To have you play?
No.
Something different.
I do not
that
play
will definitely qualify.
any games that those guys make because they are so hard. Like watching you get owned repeatedly, I'm like, no, thank you.
That has been indeed the tale of my journey.
The floor is yours, Brendo. Tell us about Sekiro.
Oh, gather round, everyone. It's time for a story. A story of how Brendo has died repeatedly in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. It was advertised as Die Twice. I have died far more than that.
Twice squared, even that would be more than that.
Maybe twice a minute at times.
Well, that's how those games roll.
Sekiro Shadows Die Twice did launch on Friday here in Australia. Nice and early. We got to get our hands on it at launch, basically as the store opened. And the wonders of having a day off on a launch day can never be underappreciated, let me tell you. From Software, that is the developer's name. I've done this joke before on the podcast. From Software, makers of Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and Bloodborne. And it feels a little bit the same and a little bit different. Bloodborne was a faster-paced Dark Souls-style game. Sekiro has put that on cocaine and is now much faster. And most of my strategies to face major bosses involve me not letting go of the circle button and merely sprinting in circles, because you can do that and it's exciting. There's no stamina bar, just a posture meter, which does not affect how you sit, but how well you can continue to block and guard.
One thing I've really enjoyed as I've sat next to you is just kind of listening to the Japanese dialogue rolling throughout the game and what words I can pick up. I'm like, hey, I know what that was. And also the traditional like samurai armors and things like that, seeing them in the game. I'm like, that's so cool. And they look so good.
Set in feudal Japan, you do have the option to change it to English audio or have it as the default with Japanese audio. I don't mind playing with Japanese audio. I play Yakuza, I play this RPG, that visual novel. It doesn't bother me to have Japanese audio, and the fact that, yes, we do know a few words here and there make us just feel so smart, because we know what wakarimashita means. Hooray!
Muzakashi desu. I think that's a phrase you'd be using a lot for this game.
Oh, indeed. It is quite difficult. Like you said, lots of samurai outfits on the enemies. You are a shinobi, however, which means you play far more of a hit-and-run style than the armoured bring-it-on.
Samurais, yep.
You can
guerrilla tactics would be much more useful against a lot of your enemies.
Yeah, I'm playing this a lot more stealthy because you do, if you sneak up on someone, you can usually take them out with a one-hit kill, which is always nice when there's that many enemies to take care of. If you fight more than two at once, you may be in trouble in a standard Dark Souls Bloodborne kind of way, and I may have accidentally done that before when I didn't realise. I see one guy in the middle of a courtyard and think, perfect. Bring it on. Face to face, man to man. Oh, there's a guy ringing a bell. Oh, what's happening? Oh, goodness, there's people everywhere.
Here comes a legion.
Just a dude with like a grass covering over him. I didn't even see him perched on that wall. What a little weasel.
Because he had a grass covering.
Yes. I know I shouldn't blame him for that. It's probably just his position of employment in the Empire. There are also gigantic chickens that have killed me. How sad to admit that.
How very Link-esque.
And also, to get the historical accuracy of feudal Japan, I also have gone face-to-face with a gigantic ogre who performed professional wrestling moves. With said ogre, he had killed me with an elbow drop, with a drop kick, power bombed me into oblivion, and suplexed me off a cliff. multiple times. It seemed to not matter which way I was facing when he grappled me with that suplex move. I always ended up falling to my demise. Good
Sounds
times.
like a match against Brock Lesnar.
Good times. There are some interesting changes from the traditional, quote-unquote, traditional style of these games that we've experienced through the series and the developers' entries. They are sort of... They used to be called the Soulsborne series, but now you've got to add Sekiro in there, so I don't know how you can even do that. You have the ability to resurrect, which is nice when you have a boss within a hair's breadth of being eliminated, and they just get that one cheap hit on you, and you're like... which has happened many times in my Bloodborne Platinum run. But you can revive and resurrect if you have the abilities and the resources to do so. But the more you die, and the more you resurrect, the sicker people become around you because you're stealing their health. Wonderful. Thankfully, I don't think the NPCs can die if they get afflicted with what's called the dragon rot. But it does prevent them from helping you or giving their quests or being an option to continue a set quest line or whatever. So the problem is you die so often, I never know when to cure it. I'm like, I'll forget it. I'm going to die anyway in this next section, so you guys can just stay sick. It's all good. As for, I don't want to give away too many details about the actual set pieces and big encounters. There was one little hide and seek experience that I greatly enjoyed and greatly disliked due to sheer terror at the same time. That was awesome.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do. That part creeps me out. But I won't say anything.
One thing that is cool, you do have different areas that you unlock. One of them is like a living memory. So it's nice to have two different options of where you go. You can stay in the actual world and see how far you can get, and if you hit a roadblock, it's nice to know you have another area that you can work through as well, so you don't drive yourself into frustration. The problem is, if you're anything like me, you'll get stuck on boss in the first line and get stuck on a boss in the second line and then go, well, fudge, now what do I do? Not to give away too many bosses, I've got about 6 prayer beads, maybe 7. One of them I found. I'm pretty sure the rest I got from bosses, so that should give you an idea of how well I'm doing. Currently getting my butt whooped by a dude on a horse, so yeah, I look forward to getting my revenge on him. Much, much faster style game. I seem to completely forget the fact you can jump during combat because I keep trying to play it like Bloodborne. I dodge, and that's it. If you play Dark Souls, usually you block, and that's it, because your dodge is quite slow. In this, you can dodge quickly, you can block, you can jump, you can grappling hook. There's so many options that I just keep forgetting I even have in my arsenal, and it's quite fun when I remember that I can just run around like an idiot and just watch a boss slowly try to hit me.
It depends on the boss, though, too. Some of them move very fast.
Yes.
Those ones are a lot harder to deal with.
Tough stuff. If you want a sort of equation to explain how it feels, it does feel like Bloodborne combined with like Ninja Gaiden. That's the best sort of example I can possibly give. Lots of verticality in the exploration. I'm so used to just having this Bloodborne like you're in a corridor. There's 2 ways out of the corridor. You go through corridor A into this room, which has this cliff and such. But there's so many, because you've got your grappling hook, you can just go up and down on cliffs and on trees and everywhere. It's sort of, I like to explore those games. Probably my favourite bit. I'm getting all the urge to play it again, so I give it a nothing short of a resounding success for what I've played so far. It is just as frustrating as the Dark Souls and the Bloodborne games, however, so if that was an obstacle to your enjoyment, you may experience the exact same thing right here. So hopefully that helps explain a little bit about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
So far, what would you rate your gaming experience out of 10?
I don't know if I want to commit to a number. It's a review in progress, but I would say it probably lives up to at least an 8.5 to a 9. That's still early-ish. Early, sometimes you bang your head against one area in this game for like an hour, so I haven't got as far as I'd like to. I had a very busy actual weekend, but I got a day off tomorrow, and guess what I'm going to be playing? Sekiro.
Well, it looks like I will be playing more on my iPad then. So what else has been going on? Because I know you've been playing more than just Sekiro.
That's right. When you've been using the PlayStation or the TV or whatever, I just want to sit next to you or I want to play games at work, I've been using my PS Vita to re-experience a platforming series that I loved on the PS2. I dabbled on the PS3 and am reigniting that love on the PS Vita. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, you can classify me as complete with that. I never have to play it again because I got a platinum trophy.
Nice.
The first game in the Sly Raccoon series, I expected the platinum to be harder because there are time trials in the maps where you have to get to the exit within a certain amount of time, and because that is basically a stealth platformer, I struggled with those on the PlayStation 2 and was really not looking forward to doing them again on the PS Vita. However, they're not even required for a trophy, so I didn't even touch them. Wonderful. Sly Cooper is fun because of the stealthy aspect of it. It is a one-hit kill in the first game, which means, just like Sekiro, you may die more than twice. Now, one thing I found strange is I mentioned that when I started playing this, there were certain things I could remember perfectly, and there were a few that were maybe even foggy, if not completely vacant from my memory banks. Now, I don't know if it's just been that long since I played this game on the PS2 to its completion, or if I never actually beat Sly Raccoon 1, because I had no memory of the final boss fight. There were sections leading up to it that I had no memory of. I'm unsure if I even beat Sly Raccoon 1 back in the day. Back in the day. So Teenage Brendo would be proud of old bald Brendo right now because he's done something that he could not. Praise me, my former self.
At least you know that you finally got that checked off your list.
And I have bounced straight into Sly 2 on the PS Vita, which runs a heck of a lot more smoothly. I'm actually astonished at how beautiful that game looks, and have only just started that. Obviously, Sekiro is going to have most of my attention, so that may be slow going. But that is my gaming goals update for this week.
A busy week it's been. Up next, we're going to talk about the future of gaming thanks to Google with Stadia, as well as the Nindies and some surprising news from Atlus.
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaming Lovers.
Nintendo released a little 30-minute video this week about all the independent games coming to the Nintendo Switch, and there were quite a few. And if you like pixel art, well, you're in luck because I think about 85% of them looked pixely.
Yes, very much going for that classic retro look. Not that we dislike it, but I think that's where a lot of indies kind of lean towards because it's safe.
Yeah, it's an easy art style. You don't have to worry about big, complex 3D graphics. One in particular, one game that did catch my eye, I believe, was Katana Zero, a 2D side-scroller. Very fast-paced, but the animation for a 2D pixel art style game, that animation looks smooth as butter. Pixelated butter.
One thing that caught my attention right near the end of the video was from the makers of the Crypt of the Necrodancer, and they have partnered up with Link and Zelda.
What madness is this?
I know, right? So they have now announced the Cadence of Hyrule. So this rhythm-based game where you use dungeon crawling, but you can only move to the beat and attack to the beat of the music. You now have some friends helping you, Link and Zelda.
In a Hyrule world, who would have thought this sort of thing could happen in this day and age? Everyone's just sort of playing nice with each other.
I know.
Isn't it great?
It's pretty awesome. So that will be a Switch exclusive. And then I think one of the biggest titles that was announced, as far as indies especially are concerned, Cuphead coming to the Switch. So now you guys get to enjoy the incredibly infuriating and difficult but beautifully animated game known as Cuphead.
Yeah, this was a game that was brought in as a Xbox One exclusive by Microsoft. They sheltered the development studio under their big Microsofty wings. I assume those wings are soft, based off the name. But it's just so interesting that Microsoft are tweeting out saying, hey, look, congratulations, Cuphead's going to the Nintendo Switch. What is this cooperation?
I know.
This just makes me feel uneasy. This is how world wars begin.
But you remember when Nintendo and Xbox were bragging on social media about playing nice about cross-platform gaming. So I think they've got a pretty good solid relationship now between the two systems. I know that all the three big company heads stood on stage together, but I feel like Xbox and Nintendo get along a little better than they do with PlayStation.
Yeah. Rival companies like that working together in any form is just jarring. But I do like that Nintendo are working with the independent studios to make little collaborations.
Yeah.
And the manager of the Nintendo Indie initiative does have hopes. They were interviewed recently and it said that they have aspirations, that they hope that this is not just a one-shot thing. They want it to be a new indie collaboration trend. And, man, that just gets my brain fluttering with ideas. I look forward to seeing how that plays out. But the other big reveal outside of that Nintendo Indie event, there were a lot of titles shown, but a lot of them only just quickly. Nothing too else was really noteworthy. Maybe there was for you, but not so much for us. Some things capture your attention, some things capture my attention, and there was an announced trailer from Atlus that certainly got Jem's attention.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness, yes. And look, there's a lot of speculation because it's kind of like a teaser trailer and no one's like 100% sure if it means one thing or another. So, okay, here comes the big excited ramble. There was this little trailer basically announcing Persona 5 The Royal, but it shows what looks like to be a female protagonist. Looks a lot like Joker, but with a ponytail. And this girl standing there having a conversation, or like the voiceover conversation with Akechi, and dialogue, a lot of fans are saying, very similar to a conversation you can have with Akechi between the protagonist and Akechi in the original game. So they're saying that this could be kind of like what they did with the PSP edition of Persona 3 with adding the female protagonist to that iteration. But this is announced for the PlayStation 4. A lot of fans thought it was going to be brought to the Switch, which brought up a bit of confusion.
It's kind of funny that the same people are like, oh, who is this Joker in Smash Brothers? We don't want that stupid game series. And then when it's Persona 5R is sort of teased, and then it's revealed that it's Persona 5 The Royal. At the moment, exclusively for PlayStation 4, they're all up in arms saying, where's my Switch port? This isn't fair.
It's so funny. There is still some doubt. Some people believe that the girl with the ponytail might be a new character, kind of like we had like new social links added in Persona 4 Golden. So it could be kind of along those lines. But I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed and just hoping that it's a female protagonist because, oh my word, honey, we'll be buying it again.
Double dip.
You know we will.
Stupid me goes, oh, she's wearing the same uniform as the protagonist. It must be a protagonist. Ignoring the fact that half the party go to the same school and all wear the same uniform. Duh.
But yeah, a part of me is like, well, if they're going to do that, I've always held out like a slither of hope that they would give that option for Persona 4. I would love and gladly shell out more money to play through that game again, that amazing game again, but as a female protagonist, because there'd be so many really intriguing dynamics with certain characters especially, and I won't say who because major spoilers, but it would be fascinating.
Well, it's crazy because we both played the PSP version of Persona 3 first. And I played as the male protagonist, you played as the female protagonist. And when we're sharing stories about a game that we've both played, usually we're in alignment with what happened.
Not so with Persona 3.
That did not happen at all with Persona 3. Certain characters did completely different things, had different opinions, different attitudes towards you, and some may have even survived key events where they didn't for me. So, how strange.
It's interesting how it can change. And so I'm like, part of me is like already going into like fantasy booking almost of, okay, so if we have a female protagonist, this is how they'd interact with this person instead of the other way. And maybe this would turn into a potential social link in this sense. And I'm like almost like trying to write the story in my head of what would happen.
If you've seen one of those shows where a cop gets kicked off the force but can't give up the case, and they set up a wall full of photographs and printouts and got the strings wrapped around, that's Jem's study at the moment with Persona 5 The Royal.
That's just how my brain is all the time. How would I write it?
That's super exciting. But
I'm buzzed for that.
the big news this week, coming from the Game Developers Conference, Google are throwing their hat in the gaming ring.
Yes.
And they're doing it in a very different way. Jem, for those who do not know the experience of purchasing or playing a new game in its current climate, could you please give us an illustration?
I guess the most classic way of buying a video game is going to a store and buying it, then taking it home and installing it, maybe waiting an hour or two while the latest patches and updates load in,
Right.
and finally playing it after, enjoying a load screen or two or 10 if you've been playing Anthem.
Well, those purchases, those installations, and those updates may well be a thing of the past if Google sets the trend. With Project Stadia, their new gaming initiative, it's all stream-based.
Yes.
The actual systems running the game will be at Google's headquarters in their evil lair. I don't know.
It does sound like the way that it was described, it kind of gave that vibe, didn't it?
All the hardware operates elsewhere,
Yeah.
and you simply stream the game to your system. Now, PlayStation have dabbled with this, not that Australia would know, with the PlayStation Now, where you can play PlayStation games if you pay an exorbitant amount in a subscription-based service.
Yeah.
Australia, A, has not even received that program, and B, likely wouldn't have the internet speeds required to enjoy it to its capabilities.
Yeah.
Now, Google have said that they have invested their money into ensuring the connections will be strong enough. They have said that their hardware will be far, far stronger than the two current top-notch consoles, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X combined.
Yep.
As far as teraflops, which is always a fun word. That's basically just the processing speed.
Yep.
But this is fascinating. You will have a controller, or you can use existing USB controllers or a keyboard and a mouse to simply play a game on whatever screens you have.
Yeah, they've basically allowed it to be cross-platform play, regardless of what you're using, phone, tablet, computer, TV. It's all accessible. It just needs access to Chrome, basically. The Google-operated browsers or Chromecast. So if you have, it's kind of similar to, the Apple TV as well, those little boxes that you can stream things like Netflix and stuff on. It would be a similar system where that's what it's reading and getting its connection from, using as a port, I guess. So much like Netflix or Spotify, where you're just constantly streaming content, it's a similar system. You literally log on to the page or open the app and hit the game you want to play, and it loads almost instantaneously. They did demonstrations. They've been testing for quite a while now. Not at the highest resolution. I think it's been at 1080. And people have been giving feedback. The ones that have been testing, I think, in the States have given pretty decent feedback of its reliability, of the crispness. They've been using Assassin's Creed Odyssey as the first ever game to run on it.
A AAA game with incredible graphics, and if the internet connection can be maintained, will look as good as if it was running on an Xbox One X.
Yep.
Or comparable
And
equipment.
they said in the conference that at launch, when this officially launches across certain countries, not all countries, I don't know if Australia's included in that. We'll get to that. It's going to launch at 4K, 60 frames per second. That's launched. So that's going to be the standard quality. Now, not everyone has the 4K capabilities in their technology at home, so it's not going to make much difference if you don't have a TV that can do 4K or you don't have like a phone or computer that can project that. You'll be limited by the hardware that you're using then, but at least it will still look the best it possibly can. And they've got plans to, they're already working on 8K and things for the future. So they're future planning everything, future proofing, and trying to make sure that they keep up with technology and that they're not limited by any constraints was the constant catch cry throughout this conference.
I think I'll have to upgrade my eyes to be able to be 8K compatible. There's only so many pixels I can pick up at once.
Yes.
Now, this does all make sense because if you think about it as the progression of the internet, the progression of technology,
Yeah.
if you wanted to watch a video from the internet, you would have to download it and then watch it as a file on your computer.
Yeah.
And now we have streaming. If you wanted to listen to music, you had to download it back in the day, and now you can just stream it. You
Yep.
want to watch a movie, you used to have to download it, and now you can stream it. And when it comes to video games, no longer, if Google have their way and set their trends, no longer will you have to download a game to actually play it. And the complete removal of any need of having a video game console in your house at all. No hardware required on your end, just a TV that can have Chrome or a laptop, an old Steam-powered laptop. I meant that as a joke to reflect its age, like coal, but it didn't make sense because Steam is actually a thing on computers. But if you had an old computer that could nowhere near run Assassin's Creed Odyssey at 1080 and 60 frames per second with top-notch graphics,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to because it's just a video
Yeah.
being streamed.
Exactly.
Now, game streaming isn't something that we're completely unfamiliar with because the PS4 and the remote play function of the PS Vita, I could play a game with a admittedly smaller resolution than a TV, but I could play PlayStation 4 graphics, quote unquote, on a PS Vita, a
Yep.
weaker piece of technology because it's purely streaming an actual video, not trying to render all the graphics on that machine.
It just had a slight delay, and there is one of the issues. We'll get to, I think, some of the concerns a little later on as far as the things that worry us about it. But
Push that aside
there's
for
still
now.
a lot to be excited about. Like, you know, there's a lot of positives as well as negatives with this advent and move forward and basically shift in the dynamics of gaming itself. So one thing that I really loved about this conference was them addressing the developers and giving them, I guess, a bit more power, a bit more creative freedom, that there wouldn't be limitations of, you know, particular engines or having to cater to the hardware that they're making a game for.
Yeah, if you're making a video game, you are limited by what the console or the top-notch PCs at the time can output.
Yep.
I mean, it's not as much of a issue nowadays, but if you think of like the PS2, for example, there was obviously a graphical cap on what was capable. And if the developers had ambitions of making it look a certain way, have the lighting a certain way, have the water effects looking a certain way, obviously you're limited by that. Now, as technology has got better, obviously our graphics are better, but I'm sure there's still been situations where they're like, we have to cut this back graphically because it's struggling. We have this high definition, super facial motion captured animation and realistic graphics and particle effects, and the water looks incredible, but it can't run, so we have to make the water look worse so it actually runs. There's always had to be those compromises made, even little ones, to get games running on existing hardware. Now, if you remove the hardware out of the equation and you have incredibly top-notch systems running at Google's centers, you've been basically unchained by your creativity. You can do whatever stylistically you want to achieve. It's incredible.
And to think of just the library of games that you could have at your fingertips to be able to play instantly. There's been no real announcement as far as the cost of subscriptions, because obviously this is definitely going to be a subscription-based
I guarantee it'll be
module.
a subscription-based.
But, you think of how well we've adapted to using things like Netflix and other streaming services. And when the internet goes down, we grumble. We're like, what is there to do? I can't do anything. It's like there's so much we can do, but we've just gotten so lazy that we can't even be bothered to stand up,
me put a DVD
put
in.
a disc in from like a meter or two away, or a couple of feet for those who don't use the metric system, and and get up and put something in. Like, we complain over something so simple, because we've gotten so used to just streaming things or having it digitally downloaded already. So I don't think it's going to be such a huge leap from what we already do. So many friends now don't bother buying the physical hardware of games anymore. It's we feel maybe a little old in our mindset.
We like to collect.
We do. We love the ones that come with the art books and the pretty cases and things like that, especially with games that we care about. But I've always had that mindset of, if it's online, it feels more like I'm renting and I don't really own, and it could be taken away at any second.
Yeah, that's always been one of my biggest objections to games systems becoming fully digital or fully subscription-based, is that you don't actually own anything.
Yes, and we'll get into that a little bit more right after this break.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side, and you could be featured in the next podcast.
Now, there was definitely a lot to get excited for during this reveal, this conference. The fact that you can save a link to a video, someone else can watch it, and then pick up the game from that point just by clicking.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
That is just crazy. There was so many things that blew my mind, but of course, being the realist that we are, we have to think about the actual reality and application of this. Many on the internet are saying this may be an idea that's 5 or 10 years a bit early.
Absolutely. And there is a couple of concerns in different areas, from the internet connections and that reliability being a bit of an issue, especially for those who love their esports. The issue of Google itself having not the greatest reputation as far as reliability, and also the issue of mods and whether that's going to impact that, sector of the gaming community and what that's going to look like. So, let's have a look at Google's history for one, because we love Google. Everyone uses the search engine. I imagine the majority of humans on the earth that have access to the internet.
I'm an Alta Vista man myself. Alta Vista is the way to go.
I mean, Google is so synonymous now with modern life that it's used as a verb. So it's a reliable company in one sense, but in another, if you do a little bit of digging, there are a lot of projects that Google have started that they have then dropped like a hot potato.
Google Hangouts.
Yes. There is one. Google Plus, which was supposed to compete with Facebook, couldn't compete with Facebook, dropped it like a hot potato. Google Reader, which many fans still kind of miss today, of the RSS feeds. Then you've got Google's Allo messaging app, which was just shut down quite recently. There's been so many things. Google Health, Google's Orkut social networking service, which was popular kind of internationally but not big in the States, and because it wasn't big in the States, it got shut down. So seeing a bit of a trend here.
So what happens if Project Stadia doesn't live up to their expectations relatively quickly?
It depends. I mean, some projects they give a couple of years, but if it doesn't pick up steam, and this, technically, the technology itself can't keep up with what they're trying to achieve in the time that they're trying to achieve it, they might go, we've jumped the gun. We've done this too early. Let's pull back. There's a lot of companies and gaming developers and even, YouTube creators that are investing a lot of time into working with this and partnering with Google.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to affect a lot of people on a global scale. So if this fails, it's going to hurt a lot of communities, not just Google.
All that time they could have invested in traditional games.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see.
I mean, you have to take risks in business. That's how it works. But, Google hasn't just ditched a lot of virtual products. They've also had a rollout of Google Fiber, which is, the fiber lines that you have for the internet. We have the NBN here in Australia. Literal fiber lines in the ground in Louisville, Kentucky. And they were one of the cities that they were doing across the United States, adding these fibers, and were supposed to be better than, the general internet. And because of infrastructure and they had only put it a couple of inches under the asphalt.
Oops.
Yeah. The road, potholes were appearing, and then the wires were getting exposed and frayed and broken, and it got to the point where AT&T and Spectrum sued Google, trying to block them. So it got this big old mess.
You're ruining the internet, Google.
Yeah, it turned into a big old mess and basically left that city high and dry when they just pulled out of that whole deal. So there's a bit of fallout as far as that, and an interesting story. I'm not going to go into all the details, but worth looking up, worth Googling.
Yeah, don't use Google. Don't encourage this. Use Bing. Where's my Bing Stadia?
It was one of those situations where I think the company meant well, but then when things got too hard, they kind of just cut their losses, and then, other people paid for it a little bit.
I'm shocked that any worldwide conglomerate organisation would ever do anything to be frowned upon.
Another concern is how it's going to impact emulators in the modding community. One of the things that I love about PC games and the amazing people who do mods are things like fixing games that weren't finished, like Knights of the Old Republic Sith Lords. I've said many times on this podcast that I'm forever grateful for the people that found and data mined those games and found lost audio and other things that weren't finished that were still somehow packaged in there and unlocked it and finished the game for us.
There are games that are incomplete when they're launched and the developers say, well, we've got other things to work on, and the community picks up and searches the source codes and pieces it together. There are other examples where mods can be something silly, or they can sprout off and become an entirely new game, like Team Fortress or Counter-Strike, those sort of games. I believe they started as Half-Life mods and became full actual games. It's the creativity of the gaming universe, and without access to the source code, because that's all elsewhere, you don't have your hands on that.
Yeah, with cloud gaming, that kind of eliminates that as an option.
And not only mods themselves, but there's other reasons why it's good to have the actual codes, whether they're on discs or on drives, it doesn't matter. But the shifty side of emulation is that everyone can get their games for free with ROMs. But the good side of it is it preserves games of years gone by.
Absolutely.
So they can be played. You don't have to track down a Game Boy original copy of Pokemon Blue that has a battery that's died and is defective and the cartridge doesn't work anymore. These things have a physical lifespan, and if you can preserve the code in a way that can be activated, that's why I like emulation. Not for the fact that I'm cheating the system and getting freebies, but trying to play games that you can't actually access anywhere else.
Yeah, game preservation, and you don't want to lose games even if they're small little classic indie games that are hardly known. It's lovely to have people that take their time to basically archive and preserve games throughout history so that we can look back, and I think that's how you can have things like the NES classics and things like that come out with, games from decades ago preserved and then re-released in a digital format. If people are locked out of that and then Google decides this game doesn't get played enough, we're going to delete it, it might be gone forever. So there is a bit of a fear in that sense, and also there is a lot of fun in modding games, in seeing people add different costumes to things like that. It adds a bit of sense of whimsy as well. So I think quite a few gamers are a little bit worried about how it's going to impact that community.
Yep. It's definitely a valid concern.
Another concern that has come up as far as streaming gaming, it's kind of the obvious one. The stability of streaming. Now, Google in their conference had said that they're going to try to make sure that the feed is stabilized by this little port box image that they showed up. It will be relaying it and making sure that it's stable with what is coming back to whatever you're playing off back home. That said, they can't control the stability of the internet, from dropouts to, severe changes. If you're playing with friends in other countries or even just in different states, Australia has slightly more consistent internet, even if it's not the greatest. You go to America and it changes drastically from state to state. The speed, the reliability. You could even argue that Australia has slightly better internet than America because we're more consistent across the board rather than
spikes and drops.
Yeah. Not that I would say that the NBN's better than anyone's. We have pretty bad internet considering we're, a highly developed country compared to a lot of others. But still, it's one of those concerns of, if I'm in the middle of a game and streaming and the internet drops out, and I think this is always a concern just for anyone that plays a lot online, how is that going to impact the experience, and will it delete the saves because it's all on the cloud? There's a lot of nervousness surrounding that.
Well, it's tricky to say how it will work in theory. My biggest concern was always going to be input lag. If you're trying to communicate through the internet from Google's headquarters to your screen, to your controller, their little Google controller, which does look like a PS4 style with the sticks in the bottom. But then you're relying on a fast enough internet to have that level of quality of the stream at a fast ping from Google to your TV with their high definition stream. Your inputs then go from your controller back to Google. If you're playing something fast-paced, particularly online, even a few microseconds can make all the difference on whether you hit or miss a target, whether you get hit or missed, and whether the goal you kicked was half a second late. There's so many different variables. Now, I do have a little bit more faith because they did have one of the examples. They obviously showed Assassin's Creed Odyssey running on it. They have partnered with id Software, which have made Doom. The Doom games from the past few years and the ones they're working on now are very fast-paced. They're almost like Twitch-based shooters. Not Twitch the service, Twitch as in your muscle reflexes. They are very fast-paced, and if they can get a game of that caliber graphically, with that caliber of speed required to operate correctly, I think that will be a shining example that this will work. The fact they have chosen them does make it very interesting because it's literally an all or nothing move. But if you're playing something like a fighter game, a 2D fighter, like beat 'em up, you need every microsecond you can get. You have frames of invincibility on some moves. Like, we're talking about 60ths of a second can be the difference between winning or losing a bout. Which was fine if you're just fighting a friend for bragging rights. But if you're in an esports tournament, you need to be able to play on a reliable internet connection with reliable hardware.
For sure.
Tricky.
Yes. In an industry now where we have esport athletes, I guess, competing for huge sums of money, having something that's unreliable is a big risk. And so that is where I think some of the biggest backlash is coming from. There is concern too of it frame rates and things like that, and the quality of the stream being lost depending on what your internet is like.
Sometimes even watching Netflix at home, it'll start off 1080 and then it'll fuzz out a bit for 30 seconds, then go back to normal.
We use our microwave and suddenly the internet can't stream anymore.
Well, that was a few years ago. Let's give that the benefit of the doubt. If anyone attempted to microwave anything, you would kill all the internet in the entire house while that cycle was going.
Pretty funny. But there is going to be that issue. I think for us, because we love just having the physical hardware and just being able to play and know that we're getting what we pay for.
Yep.
And there is that certainty, whereas there is still that big question mark of knowing how much this subscription would cost anyway. But there is that factor of having moments where it loses its crispness. You know, they promise that they can reach the 4K and things like that, but depending on what your internet can handle, it may have to drop it down.
Yeah, same experience with watching a movie on a streaming service. It can get to a big pivotal emotional climax and then this connection goes fuzzy and it just ruins the impact of that scene because you're like, oh, stupid internet. It just sort of takes you out of it.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect analogy, but the reason why I have always preferred console gaming over PC gaming is that I know that if I buy a PlayStation 4 game on a PlayStation 4 disc, it will work on the PlayStation 4 as it is supposed to.
Yeah.
PC gaming, you can buy a top-notch PC, it'll probably be obsolete before you even open the box. And you have so many incompatibility issues with drivers and things. That a game that comes out brand new, you're excited to play it, oh, I can't run it with the shadows working on it properly, so I guess I'll take that slider off, I'll lower the quality of the grass down, and then it'll sort of work. It sort of doesn't work the way it's meant to. They are advertising this as this will allow you to play a game as good as it ever could possibly be, but if your internet connection doesn't hold up, it's your fault, not Google's.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, it's kind of out of their hands. Google will do everything in their power to make sure things are working on their end, but the onus is then on the rest of the world's internet to live up to those expectations. So that's where we're saying we feel like this technology might be a little too soon.
A little early.
Yeah.
It's great in theory, and like I said, it makes sense to be the next step.
Yeah.
Because of the way we deal with music, movies, videos these days.
Yeah.
Gaming, streaming seems like an inevitability. But with the current infrastructure the world has, the current internet issues that we do face, I think it may be still a little early. Ultimately, I don't think I'll be jumping on the bandwagon. Google have announced a Stadia first-party development team to make games exclusive for the Stadia.
Yep.
Now, if those games are good enough, I will probably invest. But without that, I don't think I have a need for it.
Yeah.
Just like the consoles, we have an Xbox One, we have a PlayStation 4, we have a Nintendo Switch because of the exclusives available on each. That's the primary reason we invest in a console or a system or a streaming service or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Without those exclusive titles, I know that I can play Assassin's Creed Odyssey elsewhere.
Yep.
I know I can play Doom elsewhere. If they have a first-party game that is fantastic, if they make that Silent Hills game directed by Hideo Kojima that was supposed to be made by Konami, then I'll get invested. That's the only condition I have.
It would be interesting to see, too, what kind of games are featured on there, because being kind of like an internet browser rather than a console, I wonder how the rating system will affect it, because that changes from country to country. How will things be censored? Because there are games that don't come to Australia that are released elsewhere, because Australia has some pretty tough classification laws, especially when it comes to video games.
Yeah, Germany's another one where games do get frequently denied classification due to their content. And if you're based entirely on the internet, there's ways around that.
Exactly. So how is that getting policed? So there's a lot of questions that the community still has, and I'm sure some will get answered over time, and we'll find out when it launches this year. They haven't given a date. They've just said this year it's coming.
I was actually quite shocked that it was this year.
Me too.
That means within the next 6 months we could see Stadia out in the wild. Not necessarily here.
Well, not here necessarily because they've said US, UK, parts of Europe.
Hey, what did we just say about internet
Canada?
location? There's ways around it. Yes, my name is John Hancock from Philadelphia. Why do I sound British? This makes I'm an immigrant.
Should have said Boston. But I mean, Australia is sometimes classified as part of Europe when it comes to releasing games.
Release
and things
dates,
like.
yes.
So we could be part of that equation, but when we hear Europe, because we're not part of Europe, we're like, oh, we've been cut out.
We're one of the Queen's people.
It's like, come on, guys, come on. So, and then Africa's left out of the lurch too. I mean, it's often thought of as a third world country in a lot of ways, but in so many others, it's really not. So it depends on what part of the country or continent, I guess, you're visiting.
Doesn't surprise me they're releasing this progressively throughout
Yeah.
the world because it does require a connection.
Absolutely.
And if the servers blow out in Google because they open it up to the whole world, just think of Pokemon Go when that launched.
South Korea would be a good testing ground. They've got great internet. You'd think that they would love that. But then Asia, certain parts of Asia definitely have a lot of censorship laws. China specifically blocks a lot of websites from the US. So it would be interesting to see them try to even introduce that kind of technology and that over there. Japan would
knows?
love it though.
We'll have to wait and see.
So
The future
So
is
many
now,
questions.
but the future is a little bit away because we still need to see how it works.
yes.
The future may not be reliable.
The future
everybody.
is tentatively skeptical.
Beautiful.
Interesting though, their choice of name. Do you know where it comes from?
Stadia.
Yeah.
I assume stadium.
No.
Okay, because I thought that's game related.
No, Stadia is first used as a unit of measurement from the Book of Revelation in the Bible.
Ah, well there you go.
So just throwing that out there, I'm like going, huh. So, I mean, it's been used in many other ways since then, but that is, I think, its first recorded use. So that's why I was like, huh. One of those little nuggets of information in my brain.
Well, if there was ever a warning sign of the end of time coming, I did not expect it to be from Google's video game service.
End of days, end of days. Oh, my word. Oh, well, that was an interesting way to wrap up this conversation about Stadia. I think it's time for gaming goals after this.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at Brendo and Jem. That's BRENDOJEM.
So somehow...
Sekiro. Shadows die twice. The end. Bye. Chowski.
Oh, excuse me? You're not going to do any farming?
Oh, I might dabble because that's like a chemical reliance I have on the feedback I get from that game now. Stardew Valley will be dabbled in, but primarily it's going to be hack and slash and frustration and cursing and kicking things and throwing controllers at Sekiro. It sounds like a good time.
Abunai.
Abunai. It's a game that if I get on a roll in that game and I don't hit too many obstacles that drive me nuts, I could play that game for 6 hours straight.
Yep.
Just the concept of the exploration, perfecting my battle tactics. If you get a boss that isn't obscenely difficult, you feel good and you can't wait to see what's behind this next wall. You know, just all these little things all just keep rolling with the excitement and the excitement. Oh, yes, what's next? What's next? Oh, I won that fight. I feel good. I feel good. But then when you do hit a boss or a tough area with many enemies and you just cannot get past it for like 40 minutes, then you just go, I need a break from this. So the amount that I play Sekiro might vary dependent on my mood.
It's funny how much our mood and energy levels gauge what we end up playing, because there's so many games I want to play, but after, doing a certain day's work or other activities, like I'll sit down and I'll be like, I'm really not in the mood, or I just don't have the energy to concentrate on certain games, or any games, which it makes me sad because I'm like, my eyes hurt. I can't look at a screen right now. I just need to lie here.
Well, hurting eyes aside, if I do get too frustrated at Sekiro, I will probably play a little Stardew Valley because I'm yet to hit that level of frustration with Stardew Valley.
There are so many games that are on your backlog still.
There are many.
Yes.
They'll just have to wait their turn or never be played.
Poor Red Dead Redemption 2, by the way, which I believe we have.
I believe I didn't purchase it. Don't try and put that blame on me.
It's sitting there going, play me. And then Sekiro comes along and it's like, oh no.
Trust me, there will be a time when I need to be invested in a large open world game because I'll be sitting alone on the couch for several weeks. That's coming up later this year. There will be time for Red Dead Redemption. It will get its time.
Okay.
It will have its Red Dead Redemption. In other gaming goals, I believe there is another Hitman 2 elusive target coming in the next day or two, so I'll make sure I stop killing people with a katana and, there's katanas in Hitman. Maybe I could kill him with a katana. Who knows? But I'll probably give that a shot and play Sly 2, Honor Among Thieves, or whatever it's called. No, wait, I think that's Uncharted 2. I don't know. It has one of those thievy catch lines. But I will probably play Sly 2 on my PS Vita as well. What are you planning on playing this week? You said you might dabble in some different things in the next month. What will that entail?
I'm not sure, actually. I think I might put this out there as something people can vote on. So, for those especially who do a lot of online gaming, I would like to try and do something outside my wheelhouse a little bit, whether it's a battle royale style game. I will try Fortnite if people insist I try Fortnite, that kind of thing. Just nothing too grisly or scary, but, something different, something that I've never tried before. So if you guys have a favorite game that you think I should try that that I've avoided that's kind of in that realm of gaming, then send us a message at thegaminglovers.com, or you can message us via Facebook or on Twitter. Hit us up on all those social media platforms, and whatever the consensus is, I will give it a go.
Well, an open challenge.
I'm not saying that it will last very long, but I'm willing to try something new. But in the interim, as those votes come in, it'll mostly be Stardew Valley.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, provided your internet connection has maintained long enough for you to listen to this podcast, thank you very much for joining us. I've been Brendo.
I've been Jem.
And we are back next week.
Until then, bye, Nara.
Chowski.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.